Governor Ron DeSantis, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Let's talk about this Article 5. I've believed in this a long time because the framers did. And Article 5, just for the public, it's two ways to amend the Constitution. One way is you wait around for Congress through supermajorities to make proposals. And that's how every amendment we have has worked. And then, of course, there's actually the more federalist way, which is amendments they actually come out from the bottom up. The states, they have a convention of states, not a constitutional convention. And you need 34 state legislatures to sign off. Now, we have 19 now, Governor. And those 19 have signed off on a set of proposals. Because the issue is the people who've read my book knows, and the people I talk to in the audience, you can't have states coming in with 25 different amendments because it's not going to work. It's not the way that was supposed to be done.
You know, I think you outlined in your book a number of them, but I think some of them that are just no-brainers are term limits for members of Congress. The good thing about that is you need 38 states to ratify an amendment. And there are not 38 red states. There are 38 red and purple combined, and then we've probably got about 10 just loony left blue states. But even in blue states, some of these amendments will be popular. And so you called for that. You called for a balanced budget amendment, which we need, and you called for that when the debt was like $16 trillion or $17 trillion. Now it's doubled since you wrote that book in 2014 or 2015. I mean, it's incredible what these people have done. But one thing I was thinking about with your book, because you called for something that I think is important about a more specific definition of the Commerce Clause. You know, the good thing that has happened with the current constitution of the court, I do think the Supreme Court could have potentially overruled some of those wrong decisions like Wickard versus Filbert.
Oh, yeah.
Justice Thomas has called on this. I know Alito and Gorsuch, and I think they probably could get a couple other justices. So it's possible that they could rectify their eminent domain decisions. I know you called for that because the court has expanded what public use is, and that needs to be restricted. But I think we have a chance to get some of this done through the court because we have at least a nominal 6-3 majority. But some of the other things like term limits, a balanced budget amendment, reining in the bureaucracy, this is good. And here's the thing. It's never been done, but the founders put it in there for a reason, because they understood that the federal ruling class may become a problem at some point. And if you only rely on Congress to initiate the amendment process, anything that has to do with the corruption of Congress and the associated departments of government will never get off the ground. So you have to have a mechanism where people in their individual states can propose amendments, debate the amendments, and you still need 3/4 of the states to ratify. So sometimes people say, "Oh, you can't use Article 5 because if they propose amendments, they could just create an entirely new constitution." Mark,
it's impossible.
What is the chance? Yeah, and what is the chance? First of all, and when you do the call to go, you can tell the delegates you will commit an offense if you go outside whatever's there.
Right.
You can give the governor the power to recall them. So there are definitely ways to protect against that. But here's the thing. Worst case scenario, somehow someone proposes a Marxist constitution. Do you honestly think 38 states would ratify? Would any red state ratify repealing the Second Amendment, for example? Of course not. So I don't think it's a valid criticism, because if you accept that criticism, we have to basically accept that we're helpless to rein in the ruling class in D.C., and I don't think that's what the Founding Fathers intended. So you were, I think, ahead of the time on it, because when you called for it, it was right, but it's gotten so much worse now. So, in Florida, we've adopted, this call. I'm willing to work with other states for them to adopt this call. But these are really significant reforms and they're not just limited to what conservatives would want. There's broad appeal to this because there's independent voters. There's even some Democrat voters who know we need to restrain Congress's ability to plunge us into debt and limit their terms and so on down the line. So I'm a big believer in it. I think this is exactly what the Founding Fathers would be pushing for if they've seen how this government's been contorted over the years.
I just want to make an amendment since you brought up balanced budget amendment. I don't actually support a balanced budget amendment. I support what Milton Friedman proposed, which is limiting the size and growth of government to the gross domestic product. And I'll tell you why. A balanced budget amendment means I can raise taxes through the roof to balance our budget. We don't want that. So that's why I've never really jumped into that. What I've jumped into, though, is something I think is more effective. You cap the spending. You cap it constitutionally.
I think either way. I think obviously that would be great as well. I am not as concerned about them jacking up taxes because I think if they tried to do that, they get their asses voted out of office. And that's the thing. When these Democrats can put this on the credit card.
Let me just say something. If we're going to go through the mission, which is an extremely difficult one that I've been working on for 12 years, to have a convention, I do worry. I'm just saying from Mark's point of view, not everybody's point of view, that maybe 40, 50 years ago it sounded good. Reagan believed in it and others, a balanced budget. They are too slimy. They are too Marxist. And they'll say, fine, even we'll support a balanced budget amendment. And now this is what we need to do. And then they will raise the hell out of it. They don't care if they're voted out, they're voted in, they'll change the voting system. And so these people are absolutely, I won't say evil, but they're pretty damn close. So that's Mark's view anyway, but go ahead.
And another issue is that they will probably would do an amendment that they would be able to evade at their convenience, and so that would be something also to watch out for as well. But look, I just think the issue is the founders understood we the people ultimately, the states created the federal government, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. You do not need the federal government to amend the Constitution. The founders believed in that. We need to rediscover that. And I could tell you this. Imagine if we got to like 30 states that certify. These guys in Washington, they would freak out. They would 100%. Be so scared. They'd be looking over their shoulder. Honestly, I think you'd see a change in behavior even at that point because they'd be so scared of what the people would do. So ultimately, they will fear. They fear the people when the people are organized and they're on a mission to rein this in. So I think you were right on the money. I think Florida's been great on this. We've certified this call many years ago, and we're all in for it. So if you're in one of these states that has not entertained Article 5 amendments to reign in Washington, tell your state legislators that you want to see this because we the people have the ability to change this country for the better.
And just to point out something I've told you myself, the Convention of States there's other groups too, but they have 5.5 million volunteers, and many of them are in this audience. And I thank them over and over and over again for what they're trying to do. They are engaged. They are citizens. They don't get paid. And they show up. When I go to a book signing and I have thousands of people show up, they're wearing their T-shirts. It's an amazing movement that's going on now. They're largely under the radar. Every now and then the left looks at it and they get very nervous.